I feel like there should be some kind of Mariah Carey "It's time" introduction, but it is time to get rid of all my 2024 reads, decide what to do with them, and then replace them with my TBR pile for 2025. And I thought I'd kind of give you a bit of a run through of what I read in 2024. Hello, if you are new around here, my name is Sam. I'm 40-something, 44, mum of two. I'm deep in my midlife crisis, apparently. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping my midlife crisis is more epiphany and realising my dreams than it is tattoo parlours and weird piercings. But we will see, we will see. And where do books fit into my midlife crisis? Well, maybe they don't, but they're kind of like my form of escapism, relaxation. They make me stop. They set my mind somewhere happy. So I thought I'd share what I read last year with you. In no particular order, because if I've got to try and figure out what order I read them in, we'll be here until 2026. So let's crack on. First up, we've got The Story of a Marriage by Andrew Sean Greer. The storyline in this one was nice enough, but what I really liked about this was the way that it's written. It's got some beautiful, beautiful prose in it that just makes you go, oh, I want to write like that. I bet I won't be able to find any now. Let me have a quick look. No, I can't find anything. It's one of those I need to go through when I read these things with like a highlighter or something to actually highlight the bits that I like. But if you're looking for something that's just a bit like gives you the warm and fuzzies about the way people write, if that makes any sense, this is a really nice book. It is the story of a marriage. It's set in wartime. It's quite thought-provoking, but the thing that's really nice about it is just the moment when you get just a little section that's so well written that you're like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. It's just so nice. Next up, and as I say, none of these are in any order, is Lisa Jewell, None of This Is True. This is a proper page-turning thriller that you can't put down. Yeah, it's, you need to know what's happening, and it's a little bit twisted, but not too twisted. Really compelling, really enjoyed this. It was one of those books where I got a bit annoyed if it started getting late in the night and I was like, I need to go to sleep, but I need to find out what happens next. So highly recommend that one too. This is about two ladies whose lives are very different. One's life is very glamorous, one's less so, but they agree to work together on doing a podcast, and it uncovers some stuff they weren't expecting and some slightly scary stalker tendencies. Now we're on to my Christmas books. So I always like to reread a couple of books at Christmas, and then I like to read kind of like a cheesy, romantic Christmas book. So this year's choice I got from Vinted. I do like my secondhand books. It's Jenny Colgan, The Christmas Bookshop, and I noticed she's got a sequel out to this. Like she had it out 2024 Christmas, so I may read that 2025 Christmas. These books are so predictable. They're a bit like the Netflix films that you get with Lindsay Lohan at Christmas, and there's loads of different other rom-com Christmassy films. It's very formulaic, but it's very comforting. It's like a hot chocolate with some nice biscuits. You can snuggle up with it. You know nothing bad's really going to happen in it. Okay, there might be a bit of drama, but you know, largely speaking, it gives you the warm and fuzzies. When your brain's full of which jumper does which child need to wear on which day with which reindeer antlers and which Santa boots or whatever you've got to put up with, this kind of like just allows you to switch your brain off. I'm all for being like highbrow and intellectual, but sometimes I just need to read something that's simple, or like watch some trashy TV just to turn my head off. Do you remember Sex and the City when Miranda is obsessed with like the celebrity gossip sites because she's got this high-powered job as a lawyer, and everyone's like, but you're really intelligent. Why are you watching those sort of things? I'm not saying I'm really intelligent, but I will say that I need to switch my brain off sometimes and do stuff that's not highbrow. I hope Jenny Colgan doesn't mind me calling her book not highbrow, but it's not highbrow in a good way. It's in a way that makes you relax and just enjoy and not have to think too hard. Sometimes I think we all need that. This is all about a lady that's been made redundant, and then she takes the opportunity to try and turn a bookshop around in Edinburgh, and then it's all about the people and the consequences and different things that happen along the way. Another one of my Christmas reads, I read this every single year, it's a classic, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. If you haven't read it, you need to. It's only really, really short. It's a really, really easy read. Okay, it's in Dickensian language, but that's beautiful in itself. You'll recognise a lot of the lines from The Muppets Christmas Carol, and it is really hard to read this book without thinking of the Muppets. But that's not a bad thing necessarily. That is not a bad thing. But I love to read this every single year. Again, it's kind of comforting and just like, I just like it. And it makes me want to read more Dickens novels. So I need to add that to my list this year to read like a proper, not that this isn't a proper Dickens novel, but like a bigger Dickens novel. I'm sure we all know the story behind it. Scrooge gets visited by the ghost of Christmas past, present and future. And, you know, will that be enough to make him amend his ways? Well, if you've seen Muppets, you know the answer. And if you don't, then give this book a read. I read this at the beginning of the year. It's Scary Smart by Mo Gawdat. I read it off the back of listening to him on Diary of a CEO podcast. Love Mo Gawdat. If you've not listened to him on a podcast or you don't know who he is, jump on wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, whatever, and have a listen. He's got his own podcast as well. He is a lovely guy. I think he used to be the former chief business officer of Google X. He unfortunately lost his son. His son passed away, and since then it's kind of like he has chased wisdom, I guess. But he's a very intelligent man, but he's also very emotionally intelligent. You don't often get the two mixing together. But he does also say that he looks at things from a very logical perspective, and he sort of struggles with the emotional intelligence side of things. So it's kind of a journey for him to see things from both perspectives. He's written loads of books. This is about artificial intelligence, and it's fascinating. Mo Gawdat has an interesting take on things in that he thinks that we have a large amount of responsibility for the future of artificial intelligence, so that in order that it doesn't become something that is scary and Terminator-esque, as everyone likes to think about when AI goes wrong, that we have a responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen on an individual level. And this is a great book to read about that, and it really makes you think about how you use artificial intelligence. As an example, I use it sometimes when I am doing writing, just to give me some ideas, or to say, is there a different way of saying this? I'll always put please and thank you, and I always do that because I've read this book. So really kind of thought-provoking, interesting look at artificial intelligence, which, let's face it, is going to be the future. And if we don't embrace it and we don't kind of find the right way to harness it and use its power for good, it could come back and bite us in the bum. So I highly recommend reading that. Another second-hand book, because I love them. This was bought from a library sale. One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This is kind of like youth literature, really, and it's all set around a high school where there's been a murder and they're trying to figure out who's done it. Each chapter is written from the perspective of a different character. It's got some nice twists and turns in it. It's not amazing, but I did enjoy it. It was worth reading. Lindsay Kelk, 1 in a Million. I enjoyed this when I read it. I now don't remember anything about it. That says more about my perimenopausal brain than the actual book itself, though. Let me read the blurb, see if it refreshes me. Everyone wants that special someone. Annie Higgins has given up on love. She's too busy trying to get her tiny business off the ground. Infuriated by the advertising agency, I remember, across the hall making fun of her job, Annie accepts their crazy challenge to make a random stranger Instagram famous in just 30 days. And even when they choose Dr. Samuel Page, PhD historian and hater of social media, as her target, Annie's determined to win the bet whether Sam likes it or not. But getting to know Sam means getting to know more about herself. And before the 30 days are out, Annie has to make a decision about what's really important. Yes, I did enjoy this. It's you know, again, one of those like not highbrow kind of romantic rom-com type books, but it was enjoyable. I got really into the characters. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. Again, another one when you just need something comfortable and easy to read. Another second-hand book, Dawn French Because of You, again purchased from a library sale. I liked this, but I didn't love it. It's about some, well, it's quite tragic actually. I don't want to give too much of the story away. The old millennium turns into the new. In the same hospital, two very different women give birth to two very similar daughters. Hope leaves with a beautiful baby girl, Anna leaves with empty arms. So you can kind of guess what happens a little bit there, although it doesn't give too much away. Some of it was a bit sad and a bit triggering for anyone that's had a slightly, I don't want to say traumatic, but slightly a birth with intervention, shall we say. So anyone that's had one of those, it could be slightly triggering for you. And some of the stuff, I'm all for poetic license, but some of the stuff just didn't ring true. I was like, well, that wouldn't happen. That just would not happen. So it's nice enough, and it's very well written in terms of the writing itself, but I just didn't find it believable. Sorry, Dawn. Sorry. Another second-hand book from a local charity shop, Caroline Hiren's Skincare. This is obviously not a fiction book, but I did find it really interesting. I mean, I grew up kind of doing Clearasil and Oxypads as a teenager. Skincare as a teen was not what it is for teenagers these days, and this is a great way of educating yourself about specialist skincare, about everyday skincare, about what you should use for your skin, about like more invasive treatments if you want to go down that route, about what order to use things in, what products to use. This is one that I'm going to keep so I can refer back to. I still refer back to it occasionally because I'm like, when does serum come into the things, and when do I put retinol on, and what order do I put things on? It's got some great recommendations for different products. It's not all bougie expensive products either. It's very down to earth. There is some expensive things that she recommends, but equally there's some things you can get from Boots and Superdrug that don't cost the earth as well. So if you are not in the know about skincare, then I would recommend this book. I loved this one. I love me some RuPaul. I think he is incredible. He's just one of the world's, like, a force of nature, a force of personality, happy, even though he's been through so much like turmoil, strong, wise, and this book, it's just so him. It is just so him. It tells his backstory, and it's beautiful and tragic and funny and kind of everything you want it to be. If you're vaguely intrigued by RuPaul, then again, another really good read, and it's pretty short as well, and it's kind of written in his style, which, if you know RuPaul, it's a good style. It's a good style. Colleen Hoover, I know she's a bit marmot. I generally like her books. Again, they kind of come under the category of I need to switch my brain off and read something fairly easy and straightforward, so they're like a good holiday read for me. This one is November the 9th, so this is where they keep coming back to the same day each year, which kind of reminded me a little bit of One Day, but not at the same time. I enjoyed that. It's got suspense in it. It's not her best novel. Her best novel, I would say, is Verity, which just was, oh my god, like creepy as anything. This is nice enough. It's still got the intrigue. The way that she writes compels you to carry on reading, which I know like a lot of books do, but some authors just do it better than others. So, for example, this book, beautiful, beautiful prose, but not necessarily the urgency to move on to the next chapter. This book, not so beautifully written, but you really want to know what happens next. It's two totally different writing styles, isn't it? So yeah, if you're a fan of her, then pick this up. If you've not read one of her books and you want to read one of the better ones, go for Verity. This is another second-hand jobby, Harper Lee, Go Set a Watchman. I love, love, love To Kill a Mockingbird. I studied it for GCSE. I've been to see it on stage. I love the film. I've got a copy on my bookshelf and I reread it from time to time. Just one of my favourite books. This is kind of like what happens in the future of the characters of To Kill a Mockingbird. I enjoyed it a lot because I like To Kill a Mockingbird. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you to read it as a standalone book. I think you need to have read To Kill a Mockingbird and to have enjoyed To Kill a Mockingbird to like this. All the characters are there, and you know, she's very good at bringing them to life with their little quirks and nuances. I don't think it's quite as strong as To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's still very enjoyable. Another second-hand book, Laura Cleary, Idiot. You may not know who Laura Cleary is, however, you may know who Pamela Pumpkin is. If you've ever watched YouTube around Halloween, you might know the Pamela Pumpkin workout, and this is the lady that does it. She's kind of like an online YouTube social media comedian, if that makes sense. I hope that's what you're supposed to be, because that's what I think of you as. And this is her kind of autobiography up to a certain point. So this is quite out of date in terms of things that have happened to her more recently. It was enjoyable enough. She's led a colourful life. There's lots of addiction in there, lots of getting herself into kind of scrapes and awkward situations. If you don't know who she is, you won't find it interesting. I found it interesting-ish, but it's not been like my favourite book. I was just intrigued by it. Secondhand again. How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. Now, normally I love Matt Haig books. I think the way he writes is so clever, in the way that he makes the story, propels the story with some very short chapters. Some are like literally like a line long in some of his books, but he still manages to create that intrigue and make you want to read on. I think he's very, very clever. I didn't love this one, but I will say sometimes I think you got to read the right book at the right time, and I don't know if I read this book at the right time, if that makes any sense. I think your brain's just more open to certain things at certain times. If you like Matt Haig, it's worth a read. You might love it. It wasn't one of my favourite ones of his. So this one is about a man that can't age, and he kind of lives forever, and he goes around helping people. It kind of gives me, you know, if you've ever seen It's a Wonderful Life, the angel at the end, it kind of gives me that kind of vibe. Yeah, so he's been there, seen a lot. There's a lot of historical references. Yeah. Another Colleen Hoover. This is the one... Oh, I quite liked this one, actually. It's got like an undercover agent in it, and she's in an abusive relationship, and all the lives kind of intertwine. And this was quite intriguing, quite dark. Yeah, this was a good one. Recommend this one. Another Christmas one, and another secondhand one that I read every year, Comfort and Joy by India Knight. It's only a short book. It kind of tells the story of a mum kind of stressed out by Christmas, relatable, with kids and family stuff. I think some of it's a little bit dated now, and a little bit cliched, in the same way that something like Bridget Jones would be. When was this book published? First published in 2010, so it shouldn't really be that dated, I don't suppose, although that is still 15 years ago now, isn't it? So yeah, it's got hints of, probably wouldn't say that now or do that now. Not in terms of necessarily being woke, but just because time moves on, doesn't it? But it's still enjoyable. It's very comedic. There'll be certain things in there that you'll probably relate to. Other bits are a little bit far-fetched from everyday life, but are still quite funny. But yeah, it's how kind of blended families, extended families and friends will come together at Christmas with their own personalities, their own nuances, and it causes chaos, but also an awful lot of love as well. Matilda, again, secondhand. I don't think I read this as a child, and I'd been to see the film with Mr. E and wanted to read the book, so I did. I mean, I don't think I need to say that much about Matilda, really. It's very well known, highly relatable for me. I think maybe I am Matilda. You know, I read a lot less books and I'm a lot less intelligent than she is, and the school I went to had no Trunchbull, so maybe I'm not Matilda. But anyway, in terms of escapism through things, I think I was a bit of a Matilda during my younger years. But yeah, girl that escapes through books, who's incredibly intelligent, who gets saved from her... Oh, hello, magpie. Who gets saved from her... delinquent parents, would that be the right word? Not very good parents, by her teacher, and you know, there's a scary Trunchbull, love Roald Dahl's language and creativity. Yeah, enjoyed it. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy this one or not. It's very computer game heavy, because that's the whole premise of it. It's two developers that are working on a computer game together, or three, really, but mostly about the two, and it's about how their relationship kind of ebbs and flows throughout the years, and I did really enjoy it. It's not fast-paced, I wouldn't say. It's frustrating in places because you kind of want the characters to understand each other better, but that's kind of the whole point to it. You know, in relationships we don't talk openly enough sometimes, so things get misunderstood, and the same happens in this. Not my favourite read of the year, but if it happened across your bookshelf, not sure how that would work, then it's worth a read. It's thought-provoking, I think would be the right term. Thought-provoking. secondhand again, excuse the sticker that my child has put over the picture of the monkey. Professor Steve Peters, The Mind Management Program for Confidence, Success and Happiness. I've seen Professor Steve Peters interviewed a lot on TV. I know Ronnie O'Sullivan really rates him, and a lot of sports people work with him, like Chris Hoy's quoted in here. I've listened to him on podcasts, and I really like the way he comes across as a person, but I didn't enjoy this book. I found it very simplistic. So if you're someone that's very neurotypical, if you're someone that doesn't have any big T trauma or little T trauma, if everything's quite plain sailing in your life, then I think this book would be fine, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. However, I don't think that accounts for a lot of us, and I certainly don't think that accounts for the people he works with as well. So I would say this is kind of an abridged version of perhaps what he does. I mean, obviously he's not going to download every single thing that he would do in his normal therapy sessions, because why would anybody pay for his therapy then? So obviously it is a shortened and condensed version, but I just don't think it takes into account what people bring to the table in terms of their mind before trying to do the exercises in here, if that makes any sense. It's basically about your monkey in your brain, and you've got a computer in your brain, and the monkey's trying to trip you up and tell you to, don't go and say hello to that person because they're not going to like you. And then, part of your brain is going, no, of course they'll like you. And then your computer's got to sort out, well, will they like me? Will they not like me? Will I say hello to them? Very simplistic explanation, but you get the gist. And I think the way that he talks about it in this book, it's just a bit too simplistic, because I bring other values and other stories to the table before that are influencing my chimp, and I don't think that's touched on quite enough in this to make it relevant for me. So I found that a little bit hard going. Another Colleen Hoover, I read this on holiday, and I do think they make for great holiday reads. They are very easy to put down and pick back up again without forgetting too much of the plot, but they're also interesting enough to keep you engrossed as well. Not as I get much time to read on holiday these days. I'm in and out of the pool with the kids. This one I liked, I didn't love. It's kind of about two people that live next door to each other, and they don't know kind of the one's backstory. Is it true? Is it not true? Is he lying? It was okay, but not one of my faves. This is a book I come back to most years. It's Anna Mather, Know Your Worth, and it's all about raising your self-esteem. She talks about her own journey. She talks about things you can do to boost your self-esteem. She talks about how we have a bias and a tendency to kind of put ourselves down and not look after ourselves, to people please and put other people before ourselves. And there's practical exercises in there as well, and it's just something that I revisit from time to time, just to give myself that little kick that I need sometimes, just to make sure I'm not kind of falling down that trap of low self-esteem. And then this beast, Alexandre Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo. This was recommended to me. I did not realise how big it was when it was recommended to me. I love a classic. I loved the start of it. It's about who turns out to be the Count of Monte Cristo. To keep one say the Mount of Monte Cristo, don't know why. The Count of Monte Cristo. And to start with, it's really compelling. There's the arrest, he gets imprisoned wrongly. There's a escape from prison. It's like, oh! And the end's really good as well, because there's lots of intrigue and everyone's kind of like fighting each other, and people are, I'm not going to give too much away, but there's lots of stuff going on where he's kind of created this situation where people are imploding, not physically, but the middle bit I found really hard. And when you think that this book's quite thick, there's quite a lot of middle bit, and I started getting my different people middled up. It's set in France, so a lot of the names are like Mademoiselle and Madame and blah blah blah, and I started getting everyone a bit muddled up at one stage. This was originally written for a newspaper serialisation, and I think we can tell that in the fact that he obviously wanted to continue getting paid for his serialisation, so he wrote lots and lots and lots of it. These days, our attention spans are so short, so books do tend to be, if you look at the Colleen Hoover's, books tend to be so much shorter, which is a shame really, I guess. However, saying that, there were some sections where I was thinking, come on mate, just get on with it. There was one bit where they were looking for a letter in a drawer, and it was a bit like one of my children's books. Is it in here? No, it is not in here. Let me check this drawer. Is it in here? No, it is not in here. Don't let that put you off. It is really good. You just need some patience to get through some of the central part of it, or better concentration than a mum trying to organise Christmas with 2 children, maybe. Maybe if I read it at a different stage in my life, I wouldn't have struggled so much. Who knows?